Hey everyone, welcome to my Transport FIVO tips and tricks tutorial. Today I'm going to be discussing quite a few things that you guys should know, and one of the main things that I haven't seen anyone else do is explain how the actual game works, why most of the people are failing at it miserably. But before I get into that, let me discuss just a few tips and tricks. So of course, as you all know, cities grow. By themselves they will grow, as you're staring now at 4 cities. And as you connect more cities to them and transport passengers from one city to another, you of course speed up the growth factor. I don't know the multiplier or the bonus that you get with it, but it improves that. So of course, if I transport passengers from this city to that city, it'll grow more. If I transport passengers from within the city, of course it'll grow as well. By default, it grows. The general problem that most people have is if you put the layer here on the bottom right and you put this is one of the most important things you see: residential, commercial, and industrial. I'm going to go pretty fast because it's quite a lot to cover. And I don't want it a 20-minute bloody tutorial. I might even reach that, but who knows. So most of the time they're going to walk from residential to commerce or industrial. But because it's so damn small, the range is pretty big from them walking, so they don't mind walking. So in the beginning, they can pretty much get anywhere. So you're not going to be mainly transporting any passengers within the city, but mainly across country, across cities. So of course, if I have one city transporting to another, it'll increase the growth of both the cities. Now, if I make a line, which I generally like to do, is I like to have a tram line in the beginning and a main bus line. So the main bus line generally drops off very close. This is a strategy that I like to use. It's up to you. There's many different approaches. Drops it off to a bus station on the outskirts, which of course it's in the range of one of the tram stops within the city. Now, if I look at the line itself, this tram stop goes around all of the city. It goes from here to there to down here and to up here. So it's like the circle around the city. Now, the outer stations of the city, for example, this one is reachable by this bus stop. This one is reachable by this bus stop, of course. So I literally have passengers coming on to the outskirts, and then of course they can reach this bus stop, so they walk in here. Now, what I like to do is I like to have a standard tram that goes to all the tram stops, and then I have another sequence of trams, 4 or 5, because this is the most heavily used, is just between these 3 outskirt cities, because obviously most of the passengers here, they either want to go to that town or to the town down there. So I generally do it this way. Now, many people approach it differently. Of course, these bus stops at some point will be switched. The moment I have very high capacity, again, I'm gonna get into the mechanics of the game, why people fail. Once I have much higher capacity, I'm gonna switch them to trains, right? Once I can actually do trains at much higher capacity, I'll actually do it to trains as well. So I'm going to be getting them in by trains, and internally always I'm going to be using the tram stops within the city to distribute the people. Again, I make sure I cover all the residential, commercial, and plus I make sure I can connect to the outside, to other cities that I have. Now, this is one of my strategies that I like to use. Some people like to use only trains. The only issue with that is that you can't directly influence where that passenger from the train will be, because if you have the train inside, you're somehow limited to once it starts to grow. This way I'm not. And this is like a literally long further down strategy, so it's really getting into details. So that being said, let me jump to something else. So when you build a road or a railroad, another trick that you guys should probably know or haven't figured out is that when you build it, there's 2 ways of building it. One, you can build a road like that. It's 1.3 million, right? Now, what I could do is, if I want to save money, I could maybe do something like that. 400,000, 30,000. So that's like 100,000. That is what? 50,000, so it's 150,000. And that's 37,000. So that's probably 190,000. So I did the same track at 190,000. And most of you will build it that way. Now, just to understand, why is it cheaper? Because you're not building it straight. So it's not going to be straight. It's going to be going up and down because you're going to have like different levels of the terrain itself. So of course, if you do that, understand that it's going to go much slower. Hence the numbers above the road. So if I go like this, you see it's 300 because it's completely straight. And 300 means the speed limit, which is 300 kilometers. 300 kilometers. So of course, your main objective is to try to build them with the least amount of stops and with being able to have 300 kilometers per second, or the maximum speed possible all the time. This same applies for the road as well. So you're going to pick the road, and you're going to just for example, grab it here and shoot it all the way there. You're going to see how much it costs, 1.9. But you're going to see how much additional road or terrain you're paying to increase. to get it straight and flat. And of course, this road is going to give you the 70 kilometers per hour that it says if you move your mouse over it. Now, if you're going to go slowly, 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 you're going to literally, I don't believe it has the disadvantage of the other one, but I think it will not be leveled out. So you're going to have a 70 kilometer an hour road, that is true, but it's going to be going uphill, downhill, uphill, downhill. So you're not going to be able to get the maximum out of your trucks. So again, this is something to just keep an eye out for, and try to, of course, get the longest road possible with the least amount of starts. So you get the maximum amount of speed for your trains or for your trucks. Now, another important thing that you guys should somehow are going to end up using anyways is bus lanes. This is something that very few people know. It's this part here, bus lanes. Now, why? Because as your city gets bigger, there's going to be a lot of traffic. And as that happens, you're going to realize that your trams and your buses are going to be spending half the damn time stuck in traffic. But if I shove it as a bus lane, it gives it a individual lane for that traffic if it's available. So for example, here I have, of course, bus lanes. So as you notice that this right lane, no one else is using except my cargo and buses. So the bus lane is not only for the buses themselves, but also for cargoes. So he should get off. Everyone should get off. It's only going to be used by now. Everyone's going to get off. These guys are not, I think they're coming in from here, that's why. But generally it frees it up. So like this, you don't get your actual trains, trams, and trucks hogged up in traffic. So for example, the coolest trick is to click the line manager. I can see my lines here. So for example, I know this is my tram line, and plus I have a couple of buses. So what I'm going to do is follow the line and click it. Exactly the track of the tram. Because I don't want it to be hogged in traffic. I don't want it to be hogged in traffic. And of course the same applies for my buses coming in from the countries as well. From city to city, I should also do it all the way there and all the way there to make sure that all of these buses and all the trucks and everything that I have, even within the city and within the trams, are not going to be hogged down by the city traffic, that they have priority on the road. Again, the traffic on the road is just visual. It doesn't really affect anything. It might later on, but I don't think so. There's quite a lot of things affecting it. So this is something you're going to really, really find very useful. Of course, this brings me to my next point. In terms of the city itself, as you noticed, the cities, why are they looking like this? Well, I like to sort of influence the way they grow. What I like to do is I like to build through the city, Main Street, directly from the beginning itself. This makes it very, very easy for me to be able to influence how my traffic. So for example, I know this is somehow the center, right? But if I build a massive highway from here, right off the beginning, I'm going to technically prioritize this as my growth, right? I'm going to prioritize this as my growth area. So I'm going to really focus down on this area to grow as much as possible. And it'll get to that point and sooner or later. You don't have to, it'll get to that point sooner or later. But what you could do is once in a while, I like to sort of trim it, polish it, because I know sometimes the AI build some stupid roads. So I could demolish it, like for example this one, or demolish it. I know they can build much more bigger buildings here, that wasn't needed. Of course, more intersections means more traffic, which means slower every time they have to stop. So somehow you polish it, you design it, you just make it much more efficient, the city itself. You have the outer, I have the inner ones, they're a little bit faster, bigger ones, and then as I slowly got better and better at designing them, I sort of got better in making them grow the way I want them to grow. So it's pretty cool. So always come over your cities, take a look at how they're growing. You're going to get slowly good at this. You don't have to focus on it in the beginning. But if you really want to get the most out of your city, focus on directly as they're growing. Influence it. Remove the roads. Remove the roads or place larger roads around it so you know that once traffic comes on that you're not going to be hogged down so much. So this is something that takes a little bit of time, but it's actually pretty cool and it gets quite a lot of things done. In terms of distributions, as I mentioned, it's always good to have from within the city always trams, and you're always slowly going to be moving out and out and out. Your bus stops and then later on your train stops that are going to be throwing the passengers to that city. Inside the city, only trams and trucks, and that's it. And that being said, that brings me to another point. You know you can waypoint your trucks to a bus stop that you already have, by the way. So you don't need to demolish something and build a truck stop right there. You can just use one of your actual stations that you have. I use my fuel to drop it off here. Which brings me to my another point. Of course, fuel as you see. It's a nice little red thing. But fuel is not needed by everything in the city. So again, if I put the nice filter, it shows me where the industrial is. If you click on the industrial building, you see industrial. So make sure you transport fuel to a bus stop that covers as much of the industrial as possible, right? As much of the industry as possible. There's nothing wrong with having two stops. So now I see I only cover this part of the industry, right? So probably I'm going to have another maybe two, three trucks come to this stop here, because this stop here covers another section of my industry that I'm not covered by. So that's another thing. Again, slow down. I'm going to still explain the mechanics. So it's quite important. So this is just another tips and tricks. So of course, if I'm going to be transporting bread or cargo, there's no point to give it to the industrial. So I'm going to have to pick a station that's covering all the commercial as much as possible. So if I look at this one, let me click the station itself. Wow, it's covering nearly, 98% I would say of all the commerce. So I know if I use this station for my commerce, I'm pretty much well and done. Forget ever about supplying it 100%. I'm going to tell you why. If you supply 70 to 90%, that's awesome. But like, never try to supply 100%. Never try to, on purpose, never try to supply 100%. Of course, the supply itself will grow as the city grows. So that's cool in on itself. So another cool point is the replacements. As most of you know, you can replace vehicles, right? So these are my lines. So if I click on all of my vehicles, you're going to see that sometimes they get old, and when they're really old, they're 30 years old here. So of course they're going to need replacement. So if I click on line 9, I can auto replace them. So if I replace, and then I have to set the vehicle that I want to replace it with. First I got to see what bloody vehicle it is, because I didn't notice. It is a fuel truck. So I replace it. I set a vehicle. I want to replace it with the newer fuel one. And I click OK. And then I click yes. And then automatically it'll replace it. Now, the thing here is, this doesn't really work the same way for the trains. If you're going to replace the train, it'll replace only the locomotive. So if you're replacing a train, guys, if you're replacing a train, make sure you add all the cargo trucks to it, because otherwise you're going to replace it only with the locomotive and you're going to get screwed. So when you add the locomotive, make sure to add everything else. It is a stupid system. Maybe later on it'll automatically replace a duplicate of that, but for now you're going to have to recreate the whole train again. So you literally recreate your locomotive and all the other cargo things that you had before. So which brings me to another point. Sometimes you're going to have your transport hubs transporting a lot of stuff, fuel and goods and stuff to one of your depots. It might get confusing. So what you could do is you could preset your truck or your cargo or whatever to whatever it's supposed to transport. Unfortunately, there is not an all thing for now, so you set it to all. You're going to have to do one by one, but you can click this plus sign and you can tell it to, look, transport only crude. This is probably another reason why they won't be transporting sometimes some things from your depots, right? So you literally got to tell it, no, transport crude oil, stop getting my plastics by mistake or something. Or sometimes just won't even transport at all. It's just so confused because, I don't know, it just gets confused sometimes, so you can try to set it. Again, make sure that you're actually having a cargo and not a passenger. You know, a few mistakes that people do is they plop down a passenger depot, and they're pissed off why it's not transporting. So as you clearly see, this is a passenger, nice bus stop. Cargo is a truck stop. You know, so you have the trains. You have here the passenger, cargo. It's different, right? Bus, passenger, cargo. You know. Keep that in mind. Passenger, cargo, and then you have your depot that you can buy the stuff. So make sure you plop down literally cargo on every single thing. So if you're not getting it, make sure you have cargoes, not passengers by mistake. This is just a small little detail that I found. It's pretty cool. If you have a crossing, you can actually click on the crossing itself, and you can buy a different type of crossing. So if you like this one, or if you like this one, you can like buy different types of crossings. So again, it's silly, but it's pretty cool. And also in terms of your pathways or directions that you can control. If you're building more complex pathways on your railroads, which most of you probably have an idea, this requires a separate tutorial. This is just to show you how it's done. You can click on the actual signal itself and tell it if it's a one-way or no. And in relation to that, of course, you can create your own loop-de-loops. So you can efficiently use the same railroad for multiple trains themselves and be more efficient. So again, that's a separate tutorial, so I'll get into that a little bit later on. Now, another thing, the game isn't very optimized. It's actually not optimized at all. Again, this is something that the devs made sure that they will improve substantially. I think they found the issue. It's very graphic intensive. But I might not have the highest end graphic card, but I have a kick-ass i7 processor and 16 gigs of RAM, but still runs like crap. I put it to the lowest settings and never run it on the fastest speed possible. And it doesn't crash as much at all. Like especially in the beginning, it might lag up a bit. Like it literally takes a minute or two to get out of the lag, but then it moves very, very smoothly. So don't run it on the fastest speed as possible, guys. Crank down the graphics to the minimum. Run it maximum ×2, and I think you guys will be fine. It won't crash as much as possible. Which brings me to one of my most important parts in terms of the gameplay itself. I haven't seen anyone really comment this or explain this properly. And most people are failing this game because I don't know if they ever played OpenTTD before, but if you have, you can't play this game nothing like OpenTTD. It has nothing to do with it, so you're going to be failing miserably. So in short, whatever you decide to do in the beginning, if it is passengers, goods, or oil, or whatever it is, it's fine. It's a great choice. Always go with the smallest vehicle transport possible, smallest capacity. Why? Because you don't have the first of all, the cargo capacity to ever fill it up in the beginning. It's not possible. So for example, if you have passenger capacity of 5, go with 5. Even if you have 20 available, always go with the smallest. There's no way you're going to get it to the maximum, whatever it is. And you'll realize if it's in relation to the passengers, it'll slowly build up as the population goes up. So there's no point to spend a lot of money to buy a vehicle or transport vehicle that costs you a lot in terms of maintenance, because you will never fill it up. Trust me, you'll never fill it up. So never buy the most high end, especially not in the beginning, until you're getting the passenger numbers or the quantity numbers. In terms of production, it's the same thing that applies. Okay? When I start off, it's starting off production of 200. So there's no bloody point to buy a massive truck that transports 40 a pop or 20 a pop. Buy the smallest one possible. Slowly, slowly it'll go up, and then you will think about upgrading it. Which brings me now to the biggest point when I said don't ever supply your cities to 100%. And I mean it. It's the supply and demand here, guys. Don't ever supply your cities to 100%, because if you do, mainly it's the resources or the mines and the wells, they are more tolerant to fluctuations in terms of supply and demand. But your refineries, always the middle thing is not at all. Like these guys, the moment they see any city supplied with 100 of fuel, they will plummet down so fast in terms of production that you're going to get a heart attack. So what I'm saying is, don't ever supply anything to 100%. And on purpose, I don't increase the supply. If you see here 71, I'm not. Maybe I could add one truck, and I won't even bother. Honestly, I don't want to risk it. 70. So I really try to keep everything around 70%, 80%. You want to risk it 90%, but don't. Because the moment you supply anything 100%, the demand for that literally will go down. Like imagine you flood the market with iPhones. Nobody hell wants an iPhone. And of course, immediately the producer knows no one wants an iPhone, so he's going to stop producing 0, or the minimum, which is 200. And this is the thing. So once the supply goes up, once you know you need more, then you know you need to produce more fuel. And the best way to know if I should upgrade my vehicles or not is to literally take a look at my lines. So let's take a look at my lines. The moment I see my lines are maxed out, so 93 from 109, no. But imagine this was 93 from 93. So now I know, okay, I should go to my passengers and upgrade them from holding 8 passengers to 20 passengers or whatever, to 15 passengers, right? But the moment I see they're not maxed out, there's absolutely no reason to upgrade them. For example here, the oil, right? The oil, 105 from 89. I can take 189. And if I take a look at line 8, right? And I know it's supplying, this is the one that's creating all the manufacturing, all the bringing the crude oil and making all the fuel, right? But I'm already supplying 70% to all the damn cities. So why the hell would I want to increase more crude? I don't need to increase more crude. I have absolutely no reason unless I'm running out. And if I do increase crude, which is not a problem, I technically could, right? What you shouldn't ever do is to oversupply the cities. So if you want to transport more of it, it's fine. So I could still produce more fuel, right? So I could have a huger stockpile of fuel, or a huger stockpile of goods, a huger stockpile of plastics. I could have a huger stockpile of any of these. That's fine. But don't supply it to the town. Never oversupply the town. So you're going to see it's going to be telling you transport more bread, more goods, and whatever. No, I don't care. If I have my bread at 80, my thingy at 80, this at 90, like, no, don't care. Don't risk it. Because the moment you do that, you're going to stop the production of that, and that automatically means the whole line, the whole process of transporting, that will become non-profitable because it'll be zero. Because you're making no money, and you still have that same fixed cost of running those machines, those trucks and trains. And that's pretty much it. You sort of slowly upgrade as you notice that there's more and more demand. So that being said, in terms of strategies, long-term strategies, like I said, I like to trim my city, like really take care of my city so it grows in a nicer way, and I sort of somehow have control. I like to have trams from inside the city that cover pretty much everything. And from the outside, I'm going to be dropping off the passengers to the closest tram stop outside, which brings them all inside. And then I'm going to have trains from the other side taking them somewhere else, right? And which brings me to another quite important point is that, especially in the beginning, keep an eye out on the actual locations of the buildings, commerce, residential, industrial. They're going to move about, right? So when you're going to realize you're not going to be supplying a town suddenly, oh my God, how come it went from 77% of fuel to 10? Well, that's because you probably didn't notice that all the industry from the bus stop that you had or from the truck stop that you had in the beginning moved. None of the industry's there anymore. It suddenly started popping up over here, right? So either make another tram or bus stop, right, which means you don't have to demolish it, or just build another truck stop beside it. You know, you're gonna have to keep an eye out in terms of how the cities is growing, because sometimes the actual industry and commerce and residential move about. When they get a little bit bigger, you sort of have an idea that commerce will most probably slowly move upwards and downwards, and the residential will probably move up and push the industrial up and up as it goes. But yeah, you're going to need to move your waypoints of these stations as time goes, because they're going to, of course, require different types of quantities. So you're going to obviously want to try to capture as much as possible, as much as demand of the oil itself, so of whatever it is that you're trying to catch. And this is pretty much it. You can never fail, guys, if you do this. You can never fail if you do this. So just don't oversupply your cities. Make sure you follow up your cities and everything else. If you have any other tips and tricks, please let me know below, and hope it helps you out. Take care.